Vamos a comenzar la grabación de este importante tema de la doctrina social de la Iglesia, la solidaridad. So we begin the recording of the presentation of this Catholic social theme, solidarity. Go ahead, Father Bernard Forqué.
Thank you very much, Jose Luis, and good morning to everyone. This is a great privilege that Daida and I got invited to this presentation, and it's a very good thing, really, that a priest and a lay person work together. In the life of Jesus, Jesus worked through parables and miracles. The parables explain the meaning of the miracles, and the miracles actualize the message of the parables. So in our ordinary life as church, the clergy are the parable tellers, and the lay people are the miracle workers. You are the miracle workers because you make real the message of love of the parable tellers. And so Naida is the miracle worker, and I am the parable teller. And you out there, you are all miracle workers, and some of you are also parable tellers. Okay, thank you very much. I will be presenting the biblical-theological part in the morning, and then our miracle worker will present the pastoral aspect after lunch, or after the lunch break. And since I have only 1 hour left, I will have Mass at 11. I'll try to put the things together, maybe a little bit more compact, but I will speak slowly so that we will not hurry. I will speak slowly so that I can be understood well. Now, I would like to share with you my presentation. Can you see it?
Yes.
Very good. So the title of the presentation is Solidarity, one of the 7 themes of the Catholic social teaching as described by the U.S. bishops. And this will be the topics: our approach, the solidarity in the Bible, solidarity in the tradition of the church, and growing in the conviction for solidarity, organizing for solidarity, the practice of solidarity, experiences and lessons learned, and opportunities for solidarity work in the Diocese of San Bernardino. Our method of approach to this topic is we will use the perspective, the method of post-colonial criticism, meaning to say that what is more important is to look at the experience of the poor in their quest for a better life, in their struggle for liberation and salvation, which means that when we look at the text, the readings, whether they are primary sources or secondary sources, we will always look at them and read them with the eyes of the poor and their struggle for a better life. It is possible that the texts were written from the perspective of the center, perspective of power. Therefore, it is important for us to take the side of the poor. Pope Francis has always said that we bring the poor with us at the center of our life, at the center of our work. And in the tradition of the church, the preferential option for the poor is very important. The second is to look at the text from a perspective of intercultural interpretation, meaning to say each of us has our own experience and we look at the text on the basis of our dialogue of experience. How do we understand each other, and how do we understand the text, for example, the doctrine or the teaching, from the perspective of our different experiences, either as individuals or as a society or nationalities, because we are all one, but very diverse and different from one another. It is possible that the text was written from the perspective of making a common history, from the perspective of those who were victorious, from the victor. It is important again to look at this historical interpretation from the different experiences of people from the periphery. And Pope Francis would talk of the view from the periphery, from the margin, from the poor. I would like to suggest that all of us now who are participating in this workshop will look into our experience of poverty, or the experience of the people whom we have met who are poor, and compare that with our experience as, well-to-do or better off than before. According to the USCCB, solidarity, they define it as we are one human family, whatever our national, racial, ethnic, economic, and ideological differences. We are our brothers and sisters keepers, wherever they may be. Loving our neighbor has global dimensions in a shrinking world. At the core of the virtue of solidarity is the pursuit of justice and peace. Pope Paul VI taught that if you want peace, work for justice. The gospel calls us to be peacemakers. Our love for all our sisters and brothers demands that we promote peace in a world surrounded by violence and conflict. I think that is very well said, but that is a very loaded statement. And from a post-colonial and intercultural perspective, we may have to make some comments. Like, we are one human family, whatever our national, racial, ethnic, economic, and ideological differences. However, even though we are brothers and sisters and keepers of one another, in reality, few of us are rich and the majority are poor, either in your countries of origin, here in the US, or the whole world. So loving our neighbor has global dimensions in a shrinking world. From our side, we have emphasized our work for solidarity, international solidarity, to refrain, to avoid the use of global. Because global, even though before it means the globe, but in the 1997-1998 Uruguay round of talks, where the WTO was born, the globalization also was born. And globalization is a project of the first world nations to reduce the whole economy of the whole world into one single global economy, one single culture ruled by a tripolar world, three powers. That globalization does not respect cultures, national boundaries. The altar is the market, and the power is the dollar. So we refrain from that. Therefore, we always would emphasize internationality because of the respect for the uniqueness of each culture. And at the core of the virtue of solidarity is the pursuit of justice and peace. And if you want peace, work for justice. And that's very, very good. At the same time, we emphasize that the quest for justice would always have the perspective of the victim, because the victimizers, the oppressors, also would claim that they also need justice, and they already impoverish the poor by their own by the deprivation that they make in wages and properties. And so it is always important that when we talk of justice, to fundamentally see the experience of the deprivation of the poor and the violence that the poor experience. And then the last statement, our love for all our sisters and brothers demands that we promote peace in a world surrounded by violence and conflict. And that's very good. Again, we would like also to add, to comment by saying, the cause of violence and conflict are not the poor. From the biblical perspective, violence and conflict are originated from the rich and the powerful. Now, the document of the U.S. bishops, USSCB and Solidarity, gives these different biblical passages in order to ground its reflection on solidarity from the Word of God. And so we have Genesis 12, 1-3. God blessed Israel so that all nations would be blessed through it. And it talks of these blessings for all nations, the interconnectivity of all nations as a sign of solidarity. Psalm 72, living in right relationship with others brings peace. So solidarity is interpreted here. The fruit of solidarity, of right relationship with others, is peace, shalom. Psalm 122 is a very beautiful psalm. It's really a hymn, an ode to Jerusalem. And when we talk of Jerusalem, Jerusalem comes from two Hebrew words. Ir, which means city, and shalom, which means well-being or peace. So Yerushalayim, Ir Shalom means city of peace. It is possible that Yero comes also from the word or, which means light, and Salem, Shalom, peace. So Yerushalayim could also mean light of peace. And so here in this poem, Psalm 122, the center of the city is the throne of justice. And all the sides are tightly bound, so that we talk there of working for justice, which would bring about peace. And then Zechariah 8:16, these are the things that you should do: speak truth, judge well, and make peace. When we go to the New Testament, the document again provides these biblical texts. Blessed are the peacemakers, they will be called children of God. So peacemaking is an attribute to solidarity, and solidarity as the relationship of the children of God. It's very important to note that here we are first and foremost children of God, and only secondarily children of our parents and of any nation here on earth. Matthew 5, be reconciled to one another before coming to the altar. So again, that reconciliation, that right relationship with the other, makes us deserving of offering our gifts to the altar. Romans 13, 8 to 10, living rightly means to love one another. 1 Corinthians 12, 12 to 26, if one member of Christ's body suffers, all suffer. If one member is honored, all rejoice. Again, that interconnectivity of the community, of the members of the community. Incidentally, in the Catholic tradition, Christian tradition, our individuality is defined by the community. We do not define ourselves as individuals. No, the community defines us. Therefore, there is the primacy of the common good, the primacy of the community. And Colossians 3, 9 to 17, above all, clothe yourself with love, and let the peace of Christ reign in your hearts. So love there is an act of communion that makes us one and united. And in that harmony, in that communion, within the community, peace, and it's very good because it's not just any peace, but the peace of Christ reign in your hearts. And you know, what is the difference between the peace that we human beings normally seek and the peace of Christ? We normally would seek the peace that is quiet. There is no conflict, and you know, there's harmony always, and there's no conflict. And you know where we can find that kind of peace, where there is silence and no conflict, no violence. We will find that in the cemetery. That's why that kind of peace is found only in the cemetery. But the peace of Christ is a peace that seeks for justice, that confronts conflictivity on behalf of the primacy of God's reign. And then in 1 John 3, 16, 18, the love of God in us, is witnessed to by our willingness to lay down our lives for others as Christ did for us. This is an echo of John 15, 13. Greater love no one has than he who lays down his life for his friends. A greater commitment to the other, greater commitment to the cause of God's kingdom, for the other, for all of creation. The willingness to die because we love as Jesus loved. Now, our proposal from the biblical perspective, I think that the Exodus experience is an normative, or it's a normative, or kind of the classic expression, articulation of what solidarity is all about from the Old Testament experience, from the Exodus. And listen to this. Then the Lord said, I have seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings, and I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. And now, behold, the cry of the people of Israel has come to me, and I have seen the oppression with which the Egyptians oppress them. Come, I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring forth my people, the sons of Israel, out of Egypt. So those in red, I highlighted them because these are the different movements of solidarity, the different actions, different moments of being in solidarity. To see, to hear the cry, to know their sufferings, and therefore to come down from wherever we are, to deliver them from the hand, from oppression, from evil, and to bring them up to an alternative way of life better than that of the former life of oppression and injustice. So those are the different moments or different actions of being in solidarity. So when we hear this, we should be formed by this word of God, that we need to see, we need to hear, we need to know, and then we need to come down to deliver them, to bring them up to an alternative way of life. If we deliver them, but we don't have an alternative, that is not solidarity, that is not liberation. And if we just sit in our office and tell people, you know, this is what you should do, we are not seeing, we are not hearing, we are not knowing, you know, that is not solidarity. Solidarity is being with solidly with the people, especially those who suffer, who are in need. And so that is articulated also in the next verses. Now, I wanted to show this, but I don't think we might have some time, but we will see.
Look!
Moses. Moses.
Here I am.
Do not draw near this place. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place you stand is holy ground. I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. I am who I am.
Is Moses talking to a plant? Shh! Look! The bush is on fire, but it's not burning up.
I have seen how my people are suffering as slaves in Egypt, and I have heard them beg for my help because of the way they are being mistreated. I feel sorry for them. Now go, for I am sending you to the Pharaoh. You must lead my people Israel out of Egypt.
But who am I to go to the king and lead your people out of Egypt? The Pharaoh is a harsh and godless man. Why would he listen to me?
I will be with you, and you will know that I am the one who sent you when you worship me on this mountain after you have led my people out of Egypt.
What's remarkable about that is because it's God who takes the initiative to be in solidarity with the people, in function of love, in function of liberation. Now I have here the different moments, 6 moments, and I would like to suggest that we take this to heart, God's initiative to be with us so that we can learn to love, we can learn to be free, and we'll be liberated and be with him in an alternative life flowing with milk and honey. Now let's go to the New Testament. I would suggest that we take seriously, we take to heart the mystery of the incarnation, that the Word was made flesh and dwelt amongst us. That's solidarity, God's initiative to be in solidarity with us, leaving behind the luxury and power of heaven in order to participate in our fleshness, in the deepest pit of our being human except sin, so that he could elevate us and make us participate in the divinity, in the holiness of God, which is really our calling. We are called towards that. And behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and his name shall be called Emmanuel, which means God with us. God's solidarity with us through the mystery of the incarnation. And I would like to suggest that we really ponder, meditate on this. Can we see God with us can we see Jesus and God in our wife, in our husband, in our children, in our neighbor? But most especially, can we see him among the homeless? How is that possible? That the homeless who are so dirty and who are probably have a solidarity work. Hebrews 15, 4 verses 4 to 15, chapter 4, verse 15. For we have not a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who has in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. Again, this is fascinating because the priesthood of Jesus is different from the priesthood of the Old Testament. The priesthood of the Old Testament offered lambs and sin offerings to appease God. But here, Jesus offered himself. The offerer is the victim, is the one offered. An act of solidarity with us to offer oneself for the other. And we were baptized to participate in the universal priesthood of Jesus. Therefore, we need to be ready to be radically predisposed to suffer and die for the sake of the other, to offer ourselves for the sake of the other, in solidarity with the other, in solidarity with Jesus, in solidarity with God, who took the initiative to be in solidarity with us. Finally, let's have a look at this.
Most assuredly, I say to you, one of you will betray me.
No, never deceive.
What you do, do quickly.
Judas, where are you going?
Does Jesus need something?
We can get it.
Really? We?
This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. Take this and drink, for this is my blood of the new covenant, which is shed for many, for the forgiveness of sins.
Now, the greatest moment in the New Testament tradition of that experience of solidarity is found in the Last Supper, or in our time, in the Eucharist. Now, the oldest formula of the tradition of the words of Jesus, the Eucharistic words of Jesus, are found in the first letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians, within the context of a conflictivity. And this is what he said: "For in the first place, when you assemble as a church, I hear that there are divisions among you, and I partly believe it. For there must be factions among you, in order that those who are genuine among you may be recognized. When you meet together, it is not the Lord's Supper that you eat. For in eating, each one goes ahead with his own meal, and one is hungry and another is drunk. What? Do you not have houses to eat and drink in? Or do you despise the church of God and humiliate those who have nothing? What shall I say to you? Shall I commend you in this? No, I will not." And then the formula of the Lord's Supper, of the Eucharistic words of Jesus. What St. Paul is saying here is that in the Eucharistic banquet, we are supposed to be together. We listen to Jesus at the center. But here, the rich people arrived first in the place, in the house where they're going to celebrate the meal. And then because they have no job, they have no work, they're not working, they have their own servants. When they arrive there with their servants, they start eating, drinking. The farmers, the poor, who come from the fields working, they would come late because they will go home from the fields, they will maybe take shower, prepare their potluck. And so when they arrive at this at the house where the last supper, that where the meal was going to be held, the rich men, our rich people there, were already drunk and full, and they could not anymore partake of the food that the poor brought to share. And the poor would only eat the leftovers of the rich. And so Paul said, no, that is not the way to do it. You rich are dividing the Christian community. And if you cannot be in solidarity with the poor, you have no right to receive the Eucharist, to be part of the Eucharist, because you are not able to be in solidarity with them. That is how profound and how serious the celebration of the Eucharist is, as an act of solidarity for the forgiveness of sins and for the transformation of the world. And we have seen that in the Eucharistic banquet with Jesus. The moment of joy, of unity, of communion also became the moment of betrayal, of sadness. And how many in the human community, in the human history, have we experienced that? That every moment of joy, every moment of love and communion is also at the same time a moment of sadness, a moment of betrayal. And yet Jesus says, no, this is my body, this is my blood. Do this in remembrance of me. And we are supposed to do that together as a human community. So I was going to ask you to go into your Zoom rooms and make a reflection of this questions, but I would just like to suggest, we don't have much time. I would just ask you to stay quiet for a while, about 1 minute, and then ask yourselves, what touched you in the presentation on solidarity in the Bible, and why? Second, what was difficult for you to accept in the presentation on solidarity in the Bible, and why? And finally, what was new to you in the presentation of solidarity in the Bible? I would like to ask that we take a minute of quiet. For those of you who are aspiring to be permanent deacons, maybe you can have an sharing outside of this presentation with your spouse or with your classmates in the diaconate, in the course of the diaconate. And those of you who are not candidates for the diaconate, maybe you can share these questions with your beloved, with your family, with your friends. And the silent reflection and prayer begins now. Okay, let's go now to the teaching aspect, the doctrinal aspect of solidarity after, or the theological aspect of solidarity after that biblical perspective on solidarity. Solidarity in the tradition of the church, found in the social teachings of the Catholic Church. So Pope Francis on Laudato Si talks of, he has an analysis of the international situation of humanity. And he says, developing countries with the most important reserves of the biosphere are found, continue to fuel the development of richer countries at the cost of their own present and future. The land of the southern poor is rich and mostly unpolluted, yet access to ownership of goods and resources for meeting vital needs is inhibited by a system of commercial relations and ownership, which is structurally perverse. As the United States bishops have said, greater attention must be given to the needs of the poor, the weak, and the vulnerable in a debate often dominated by more powerful interests. We need to strengthen the conviction that we are one single human family. There are no frontiers or barriers, political or social, behind which we can hide. Still less is there room for the globalization of indifference. Let me just comment on this from the perspective of post-colonial and intercultural dialogue. It's very clear to Francis the situation of the world divided between the rich and poor. And he called you have richer countries, and you have the south, the north, the more developed, and the south, the less developed. And before it was also east, the less developed, and the west. Now it's west, north, east, south. Now, I would like to suggest that for many of you who are who know of your own countries of origin, to remember this, to look into this very well. The reason for migration to the United States is probably not rooted in the poverty of where we came from, but it's probably rooted in the United States and the economic interests of the north, of the west, who have choked our resources. That the economies of the countries where we come from are not for us, but they are for the multinational corporations, the transnational corporations who have control over our economies. The powerful economies of the West and of the North, who are investing in our countries and using the bureaucracy and government of our countries in order to siphon our resources. That's one. For example, if you look at what we wear now, our computer, our clothes, is there anything there that is not made by a multinational corporation? So, oh, Father, the clothes now is a global product because the material comes from India, the machine came from the US, the worker came from Bangladesh, and so the production is global. So, yeah. And I'm saying global in terms of globalization. Yeah, that's true. That's true. But at the same time, the owner of the company is probably from the West and from the North. So our economies of the South are not made for our people. A system of commercial relations and ownership which is structurally perverse. Therefore, we need to strengthen the conviction that we are one single human family. We must remember this, workers for solidarity. We must remember this, that the definition of nation states and the determination of the boundaries of nation states belonged to invaders who were victorious because of their power. So, for example, in Europe, how many times did they draw the map of Europe, changing boundaries and countries? Because families who were more powerful conquered other families less powerful. There used to be Prussia. Now Prussia is no more. And then you have now Afghanistan, Kazakhstan, which before did not appear in the map. And so also here in the US, the Mexicans would say, no, we did not cross the border. The border crossed us. And also the situation of the Native Americans. We must look at that very, very carefully and very, very profoundly from the perspective of solidarity. And then Pope Francis still in Laudato Si, in the present condition of global society, where injustices abound and growing numbers of people are deprived of basic human rights and considered expendable, the principle of the common good immediately becomes logically and inevitably a summons to solidarity and a preferential option for the poorest of our brothers and sisters. This option entails recognizing the implications of the universal destination of the world's goods. But as I mentioned in the Apostolic Exhortation Evangelii Gaudium, it demands before all else an appreciation of the immense dignity of the poor in the light of our deepest convictions as believers. We need only look around us to see that today this option is in fact an ethical imperative essential for effectively attaining the common good. Now here, Pope Francis is making a complete subversion of what we used to believe. Our ideals are supposed to be, let's become rich, let's become powerful. So no, our ideal is to be in solidarity with the poor, to make the poor at the center of our lives. Because it's inspired by God. God is not the center of himself. Jesus is not the center of himself. No. We, the poverty, the sinfulness of the human condition, the deprivation of history, of creation, we are at the center of God's heart, the center of Christ's heart. So here we see that. And as I said before, we are defined by the community. We don't define the community. No, the community defines us. And here Pope Francis is saying, common good. The world is for everyone. Therefore, there is a primacy of the common good rather than of individuals. So the option for the poor is a new way of looking at the world. And we who are engaged in this solidarity work, we must have the eye, the eyes of the poor, the ears of the poor, the noses of the poor, to look at the world from the periphery, from the victim, and to strive for the common good. Pope Benedict in Charity and Truth, to love someone is to desire that person's good and to take effective steps to secure it. Besides the good of the individual, there is the good that is linked to living in society, the common good. It is the good of all of us, made up of individuals, families, and intermediate groups who together constitute society. To desire the common good and strive towards it is a requirement of justice and charity. So I would like to suggest that we look at this and very profoundly, and the emphasis on the common good as a requirement of justice and charity. Suppose everyone were to partake of everything that the world produces. Then we will have a society of people who live in equality and justice and love. And then Benedict, Charity and Truth, it is good for people to realize that purchasing is always a moral and not simply economic act. Hence, the consumer has a specific social responsibility, which goes hand in hand with the social responsibility of the enterprise. Consumers should be continually educated regarding their daily role, which can be exercised with respect for moral principles without diminishing the intrinsic economic rationality of the act of purchasing. It can be helpful to promote new ways of marketing products from deprived areas of the world so as to guarantee their producers a decent return. Here, I think Benedict is making a balancing act inspired by the Rerum Novarum of Pope Leo XIII. But here he talks of the purchaser and the purchased, And in this sense, we would like to suggest that it is very important in our global solidarity and international trade. We need to buy the goods that are directly produced by the poor at a reasonable, just price, rather than go to the middlemen who, in the experience of the poor, buy the products cheaply from the poor. And then in the market, they jack up the price. And then they have the profits. I was just talking to a businessman and he said, the product actually of this coat is actually $50, but they sell that like $150 or $201,000. And of course, they talk of the respect of human rights, the affirmation of the rights of everyone in the community, not the absolute freedom of the individual, but the care for the other in community as my brother and sister. And then we have social concerns. Incidentally, I would like to suggest that you really go very carefully into these papal documents, and Solicitudo Rei Socialis is one of the best, I think, that John Paul II produced. Solidarity is not a feeling of vague compassion or shallow distress at the misfortunes of so many people, both near and far. On the contrary, it is a firm and persevering determination to commit oneself to the common good, that is to say, to the good of all and to each individual, because we are all really responsible for all. Interdependence must be transformed into solidarity, based upon the principle that the goods of creation are meant for all. That which human industry produces through the processing of raw materials with the contribution of work must serve equally for the good of all. I would like to suggest that in this light, we look into the globalized economy boasts of a global product, which actually is violative, the production of which is violative of the rights of the others in terms of wages, in terms of sustainability of the source of the raw materials. Now, interdependence must be transformed into solidarity. The product must be a product not of exploitation, but a product of unity, of interdependence, of solidarity, of being with each other, that no one is being deprived along the way, but everyone is taken care of along the way justly. And here, that which human industry produces to the processing of raw materials with the contribution of work must serve equally for the good of all. We have 10 minutes more, so I hope I can make this very fast. let me see. In the compendium of the doctrine of the social doctrine of the church, it talks of solidarity highlights in a particular way the intrinsic social nature of the human person, the equality of all in dignity and rights, and the common path of individuals and peoples towards an ever more committed unity. The new relationship of interdependence between individuals and peoples, which are de facto forms of solidarity, have to be transformed into relationships tending towards genuine ethical solidarity. And this is very good because now we bring into focus the possibility of right or wrong in the social relations or in interdependence in terms of solidarity. Therefore, when I go to confession, usually I only go to confession because I sinned, because I lied, I disobeyed my parents. Even if he's 65 years old already, he still confesses of disobeying his parents and all. No, these are, we also have sins against solidarity. We have also sins against interdependence of individuals and peoples. So we have raised solidarity and relationships into a new level. It's not a social transaction, not a social agreement, but an ethical social responsibility as well. Which means that we really need to go, because this is not an emotional thing, we really need to go into real analysis of the dynamics of economics, of politics, of culture. How are goods produced? Not just in terms of the scientific production of the machine, but in terms of the recognition of the rights of the worker, the deprivation of the poor, and the exploitation of nature, of natural resources. Okay. Now, the unsurpassed apex of the perspective indicated here is the life of Jesus of Nazareth, the new man, who is with humanity even to the point of death on the cross. We already have said that. I have some questions, but maybe we can do that later. Now, discovering and rediscovering our roots through participation in local, national, and international solidarity. We now look into the concrete ways of doing solidarity work. So solidarity is not merely collecting money from the rich to be given to the poor for their education, food, and their future. No, it is, but more than that, it can just be considered as almsgiving, philanthropy, and humanitarianism. More than that, it is not merely connecting parishes and communities like twinning or sister relationships between first world developed countries and third world and developing parishes and communities on the other. It's more than that. You know, this way may just be human friendships and nice social relations. Solidarity is more profound because sociologically, it takes seriously the question of relationship between the rich and the poor, between developed countries and underdeveloped and developing countries. Theologically, it raises the question of justice and equality, of integrity of creation, and the dignity and equality of all human beings and our common home over socioeconomic political arrangements. That's why we need scientific ways of analyzing the economy of the political system. And of course, John Paul II and Pope Francis has always been insisting of a new alternative economy, a new alternative world social order that is not exploitative, that is not violative of the rights of people, and does not exploit creation and kill, creation. So solidarity means social concern of the church directed to as always expressed in the most varied ways. It's constant, it's new, And the center is always the poor, the people, the poor, and the alleviation of their deprivation in popular progression. And then development. And that's why you have the different view from the socio-anthropological perspective. We are therefore faced with a serious problem of unequal distribution of the means of subsistence originally meant for everybody, and thus also an unequal distribution of the benefits deriving from them. And this happens not through the fault of the needy people, and even less through a sort of inevitability dependent on natural conditions or circumstances as a whole. No, these are not, we cannot blame the poor, even though we blame them because they're lazy, they're uneducated, but we cause their laziness, we cause their miseducation and lack of education. So because of natural conditions, hurricanes and typhoons, oh yes, but we have also exploited their lands and mine their resources and destroy their environment for the sake of profits and the economy rather than for the sake of persons. And therefore, if we develop, development is the new name for peace. There will be no rebellion or no social misfits if we have them developed together. And we need this theological reading that sin can be personal, sin can be structural and social, and therefore the moral alternative of solidarity. Like, we have to understand the structural sin or social sin. For example, we are now using Zoom and computers, and we need this so that we can have this conference on solidarity. But to produce this computer, if your computer is an laptop, how do you call that? The computer is made in China, you know that it has violated, the company has violated the rights of the Chinese worker. If it's made in Korea or in Bangladesh or Philippines, you know that the production of the computer is done through cheap labor and violation of the rights of the poor there, of the workers there. And so, and so now we are using it, and the money that we use to buy this will be used to further the violations of the rights of the poor. And that's structural sin, social sin, and yet we cannot do without it because we are caught in this web. So we need to see that again, very profoundly. Okay, that's already, we have seen that already. So these are the forms of solidarity among the poor themselves, when they help each other free themselves from oppression and poverty, personal and interpersonal, in our relationship with one another, when we educate each other of the conditions of the poor, the conditions of labor, and our need to be morally responsive to their needs. Familial and societal, when we influence our family and our society, like the less we consume, the more we are, the less party we are to the structures of sin, the less that we hoard goods, like what Saint Basil said, or was it Saint Cyril said, the clothes that you have in your wardrobe, which you do not wear, are the clothes of them who are naked. The shoes that you keep in your room that you do not wear are the shoes of them who have no shoes. And in the Philippines, we have a woman who has 2,000 shoes. And then, of course, domestic and national and international and global. Okay. I would like to suggest that we continue to reflect on solidarity as, for example, defined by Evangelii Gaudium, the social function of property and the universal destination of goods are realities which come before private property, We really have to change our mindset. You know, the common good comes before private property. Changing structures must be based on our sense of the poor. You know, changing structures without generating new convictions, that attitude will only ensure that those same structures will become sooner or later corrupt, oppressive, and ineffectual. You know, we will say, oh, I will now be new. I will have new hopes and new dreams, but we will have the same old habits, the same structures. You know, old habits and old structures will destroy, will shatter our ways and our new dreams and our aspirations. Okay. We need to see poverty and education with the new eyes. And solidarity now is, in Pope Francis, a fruit of social dialogue for peace. Thank you very much. I cannot anymore stay longer because I need to say Mass. So these are the questions that I would like to suggest that you could think of, you could reflect on. And this afternoon, Naida, or after this talk, Naida will take over. And thank you very much, Jose Luis. Thank you for this opportunity to be able to share with you the profound challenges of serious, real solidarity work in our time. Thank you, and have a blessed day and a blessed Mercy Sunday to us all.
Thank you so much, Father Ben. That's a great presentation. Unfortunately, you have to go because you have the Mass at 11. But Father, do you think you have like 3-5 minutes for questions?
5 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, 5 minutes. Yeah, I can run after 5 minutes. Yes.
Okay, Father, can I also ask you if you can say a couple of words in Spanish, like, for you, what is the heart of your presentation? And you want to emphasize something?
Sí, según,
Gracias.
de nada, según la tradición de nuestra iglesia, la tradición de nuestra fe, el punto de vista de los pobres son muy, muy importantes para nosotros. Tenemos que ver, tenemos que huir, tenemos que hablar con este punto de vista de las víctimas, de los pobres. Este es el punto de partenza. How do you say that? Point of departure.
Punto de partida.
O sea, punto de partida, sí. Punto de partida de nuestro trabajo, de nuestro ministerio de la solidaridad. Porque este también es el punto del amor de Dios a nosotros. Cuando nuestro Señor deje el lujo del cielo para salvarnos, y en solidaridad con nosotros. Es muy, muy importante el punto de vista de los hombres. Gracias.
Muy bien, Padre, pues muchísimas gracias. Muy sencillo, pero muy profundo. But before we go to break, let us share a little bit of Father Ben's presentation. You want to say a comment or a question or something?
José Luis,
Sí.
no le entendí muy bien a esa parte donde dijo que el bien común estaba antes que la propiedad privada, algo así dijo.
Sí, exactamente así lo dijo. Que el bien común está primero que la propiedad privada, porque todos los bienes fueron creados para todos, no solo para algunos. Y mencionó el principio del destino universal de los bienes. Important questions about private property and common good. According to the principles of the right distribution of goods, God created the goods for everyone. So the destination, the universal destination, the common good, is first than the private property. Supposed to be first. Any other reaction, comment? Alfonso?
José Luis, sí. For me, it was what struck me, what really touched me within me, was the little video of the Last Supper, and which is, I had in mind what solidarity was, but I never saw the Eucharist being the deepest level of solidarity. God with us, and that's what really it has taken me to a different level of our awareness of what solidarity is. Para mí lo que me llamó más la atención fue esta nueva manera de ver la solidaridad en el pequeño video que miramos, donde Jesucristo se hace solidario en la Eucaristía. Entonces, de aquí en adelante, ese pequeño video, esa enseñanza que nos mostró el Padre Ben, pues siempre que reciba la Eucaristía, el cuerpo y la sangre, la divinidad de nuestro Señor Jesucristo, pienso ahora que es la manera más profunda de la solidaridad de Dios con nosotros.
Gracias, thank you, Alfonso. Very good observation.
José Luis,
Sí, Elsa Laura.
una de las cosas que me llamó a mí la atención es cuando dice el Padre que en una comunión simultánea tenemos, porque en la solidaridad estamos todos unidos. So, en esa solidaridad que es una comunión simultánea, todos estamos simultáneamente, experimentamos el gozo y el sufrimiento. Y cuando cae una situación en esa comunión simultánea, a unos que les da gozo, compartimos en su gozo. E igual, cuando a unos les cae el sufrimiento, compartimos en su sufrimiento. I was just sharing that one of the things that really stood out with me was when Father mentioned being in communion simultaneously, that when in this simultaneous communion, when one feels joy, we all experience that same joy. And when one feels suffering, we all experience that suffering. But in this, I also thought about the definition of the poor. When we had Anna Hamilton last month in May give a presentation, and Ken Sawa, we've been thinking about the poor and the definition of the poor and who are the poor, and how do we recognize the poor, and not, it goes beyond, as Father Ben says, beyond those that we see that are homeless, that are evidently poor to us, but also in this time and age, it's those who are, when we look at the poor, those who are economically poor, those who are socially poor, the poor in spirit. También esto me recuerda hace un mes con que tuvimos a Anna Hamilton y Ken Sawa, cuando estuvimos reflexionando sobre los pobres, y es más allá que los pobres que reconocemos a la vista, ¿verdad? A los que no tienen hogar, a los que tienen hambre, sino expandir nuestra definición del pobre con los pobres de la economía, los pobres sociales, y no sé si lo estoy traduciendo bien, los pobres en espíritu, y luego para mí también es la definición de pobre. Para mí ahora se me ha expandido, más bien la definición es los que tienen poder y los que no tienen poder. So the poor, for me, after hearing Father Ben talk, is more like an expanded definition of the poor. And basically, for me now, the definition is the poor is the difference between those who have power and those who don't have power. You know, and power, because he's defined it as, you know, countries, corporations, but we also forget institutions. Institutions have a lot of power. Institutions, public, private, religious institutions have power. And in this definition of power, they have the ability to either raise those who are poor or bring down those, you know, who you know, they can bring us down or they can raise us up. You know, y ahora mi nueva definición del pobre después de escuchar al Padre Ben es más bien una definición de quién tiene poder y quién no tiene poder. Y el Padre Ben habló cerca de quién tiene poder, países, corporaciones e incluso instituciones públicas, privadas y religiosas. Todos estos tienen poder y el poder de ellos como sociedad, como comunidad, nos pueden levantar o nos pueden oprimir. Y no importa de dónde viene ese poder, el poder existe y así bueno, para mí así fue la reflexión en estos minutos. Gracias.
Thank you, Elsa Laura. Thank you very much. Ramón, una reflexión breve porque vamos a tomar ya el descanso.
Oh, sí, es acerca de lo que estaba hablando hermana Elsa Laura. Es de que también de qué manera, así lo entendí yo, de qué manera también somos portadores en muchos de los casos sin saberlo, ¿no? Estaba hablando del pecado personal, del pecado estructural y del pecado social. Habló acerca de la economía de las personas que trabajan allá en China, Bangladesh y todo eso. Entonces, de alguna manera, los que les pagan una mano de obra barata que no es la que ellos deben de tener, pues también el que tiene el poder pues les paga lo menos. Y nosotros cuando tenemos el producto aquí pues sin saberlo pues también somos portadores, ¿no? De aquellas personas que no son bien pagadas, bien asalariadas.
Sí, muchas gracias, Ramón. It's a good reflection on the personal sin, the structural sin, and social sin, and how can we sometimes commit a social sin, a structural sin, when we are not conscious about how we are violating the rights of others, or we continue oppressing the poor. Good point. Thank you so much. Dan, and then we have a break. Dan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just like to commend Father Alforque for his perspective, his profound knowledge of solidarity. I know he has a lot of experience interacting with a lot of organizations, helping them out, guiding them towards solidarity. What struck me from his talk was that he said that we have to commit to the common good because we are really responsible for all, and that we have to see poverty, solidarity with a new eye, and it gives me a question. Just a piggyback with Elsa, Laura, that how can you have common path of individuals and people toward an ever committed unity when you have deep-seated cultural differences, different beliefs and morality in our country? When people who are interested to change socioeconomic structure are in the hands of people who will be adversely affected by their action. So there's a lot of problems, challenges ahead of us in forging and creating solidarity among us. Father Alforque mentioned that we should not be concerned with service alone or almsgiving, but probably develop a deeper relationship with the poor, with the oppressed, with the marginalized, with those who are victims of injustices, so that we can learn from them, and from their experience, we can really open our eyes and develop a more loving and helping relationship with them. That's it.
Yes, beautiful. Thank you so much, Dan. Your comment, yes, is kind of a summary of Father Ben Alforque's presentation, calling us to practice solidarity and to be more proactive in this sense. So we have in front of us huge challenges, because we live in a society that is upside down, and we need to see how our faith is really connected to this social teaching of the church. Thank you for your great comment. Su comentario es muy atinado sobre ese desafío que tenemos enfrente de nosotros ante una sociedad que se mueve por muchos intereses, y cómo nosotros desarrollar una capacidad de crear solidaridad y ser más activos en ese sentido. Okay, thank you all for your active participation. While you was talking, I was thinking on asking Father Ben to expand his presentation, because he, in the morning, we took a lot of time from his presentation, and then he had the Mass at 11. So I'm going to ask him if he has time during the week to make the presentation again through Zoom, so we can have a full recording of his presentation. I want to talk to him about it.
There you go.
Excellent.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. There you go. Is that better?
Yes, it is better.
Okay. So when Father Ben and I were talking about our presentation, he would prefer that we have a breakout session, but I think some of you have already shared on these questions. But I want to make sure we cover everything. So he left us with these questions, and what touched you in the presentation on solidarity in the tradition of the church, and why? And I know a few of you have shared on that. Is there anyone else who would like to share on that? No? Okay, what was difficult for you to accept in the presentation on solidarity in the tradition of the church, and why?
Nada, this is Tom. So this second half of the presentation is always challenging to me, because as Father Ben suggested, it involves really a shift in thinking. We were all raised with a certain set of ideas. You know, you aspire to try and gain prosperity. You try, that's your goal, to try and do better. We were raised that way. And so to be presented with ideas that change that, to make first the care of the other, is a challenge to our economic sensibilities. You know, we all work, we all have jobs, we're all trying to do well, we're all trying to keep our houses up and drive our cars and all the things we do on vacations. And so it's challenging. And so I always struggle with this dichotomy, this two sides. You know, you're either rich or you're not. If you're rich, that's bad. And so you need to be not rich, because that's good. I know that the people are allowed to prosper and do well. They've been blessed with ability, and so they can prosper. But I know that they're also then required to be generous with their successes and care for the poor. Still, though, this is a challenging thing. And I understand when Father said that almsgiving is almsgiving, and it's fine, but that's not the sum total of solidarity. It needs to be more than that. And I get that. But I think for some people, if you can get them to start sharing, that's a start. It's a good start, you know? So I understand the goal and the direction. And for myself personally, and I suppose in my ministry of sharing. And so I just want to find a way to present it that isn't, that's approachable to people, that they can go from that point to this point in a more, I don't know, easier way. so they're not made to just feel like their success is bad. That's it.
It's not.
Oh no. that's kind of what I need to resolve.
We need them.
Oh yeah, for sure.
We'll get there though. We'll get there. Anybody else?
Naida.
Yes. Yeah.
Yo quería compartir esa, Laura.
Oh, can you translate that? Thank you.
Ok, gracias. Mire, en la segunda donde dice qué difícil, o sea, es aceptar o entender la solidaridad de que la iglesia nos llama, ¿verdad? O sea, para mí, yo pienso que para muchos sigue siendo un reto, o sea, poder entender y poder ver más que nada y descubrir el rostro de Jesucristo en un drogadicto, en un homeless, en una persona que necesita no solamente una ayuda espiritual, sino que una ayuda económica y un proceso de sanación corporal también. Entonces, en veces nosotros tratamos de ayudar a esas personas, pero la ayuda no es suficiente y en veces nos acercamos con miedo porque su adicción, su forma, su actitud que vemos en ellos no nos da la confianza y mucho menos nos va a dar, o sea, esa mentalidad de poder decir, en esta persona puedo yo ver el rostro de Jesucristo, por eso mi corazón, o sea, me conmueve y me lleva a hacer una acción de tener compasión y ayudar a esta persona. Es un reto y va a seguir siendo un reto bien grandioso tal vez para muchos de nosotros todavía.
It is a big challenge for all of us to see with the eyes of Christ that in those who are like, for example, rejected by society, homeless, sick people, people on the streets, how can we see in them the face of Christ? And this is, how are we going to offer compassion, healing, solidarity if we can't see Christ in them? It is almost impossible. So the presentation is very challenging because we are here facing with the way God practiced solidarity with us, and it's very the opposite to what we used to do and think.
Can I jump in? This is Ursula.
Yes, Ursula.
Yeah.
Ursula.
Yes.
Well, Ursula, can you please let Dan jump in first, because
okay, sorry,
he was first and even the previous.
Okay, that's fine. That's
and
fine.
Then you, Ursula.
Okay.
Dan, please.
Yeah.
Dan and then Ursula.
Yeah. The one thing that comes to my mind as difficult for me to accept in the presentation on solidarity in the tradition of the church, it reminds me of the time in Latin America during the 1960s, where the church was vehemently against liberation theology, which basically caters to the poor, to the dispossessed, to the victims of injustices in Latin America, to the point that Pope John Paul II called them heretics, and priests were criticized for joining such movement, and but people like Father Camilo Torres, Archbishop Oscar Romero, Sister Dory May Stank were all killed in the service for the poor, for trying to work in solidarity with the oppressed. And the church's position was against liberation theology, but recently Pope Francis is open to liberation theology because he understands the social and economic structure that dehumanizes people, and he has used words that were originally espoused by the liberation theologists in the 60s. And recently we also heard that Bishop Lupo, who became the president of Paraguay, was a proponent of liberation theology, and he was also scolded and warned not to involve himself in politics, because the church tradition is more attuned to spiritual and religious aspect of life. So they were not really in favor of being involved in politics or become a socio-economic activist, helping the poor and the dispossessed. So it's just probably the changing signs of the times, that church adapts to these conditions, but still there is no clear-cut decision on what the church view or side with the liberation theology, which is basically the option for the preferential option for the poor.
Thank you, Dan. I think Ursula, perfect timing.
No, somebody else after Dan.
Was there somebody else?
Come on, Ursula.
Okay. All right. The thing that struck me most of all is that this is all cyclical, and it has to be preached constantly because the world is constantly changing, and we have to be reminded of our poor, of our brotherly love. Because I had a hard time understanding why, quote unquote, the poor is preferred by God. And then I had to go beyond that and understand this is happening throughout the world over and over and over again. It's nothing that's gonna be healed once and for all. That's part of human nature. So to me, the learning of solidarity is something that has to be continual. We cannot stop and say we've learned all the rules, all the processes, and life goes on, and everything will be okay. That our human nature causes us to go through this cycle over and over again. And for some of us, it could be shocking because we never heard it before. But once we grasp it, to me, it sort of comes natural after you've grasped the true meaning of solidarity, where you could understand the poor in the context of, say, like the biblical part of it, the traditional part of who are the poor, you know? So that was just a thought as I was listening to the commentary from others and what Father Ben shared, that this is something that we have to be constantly be educated on. We cannot believe that is something that's learned and that's it.
Thank you, Ursula. You know, Ursula, it reminds me of what you teach in Become, the 4 pillars.
Yeah.
And the 3rd pillar of the church is liberation,
Right.
except that there is so much interpretation and misunderstanding on that term, liberation. But if we focus that liberation is our participation, everyone's participation in the social, economic, and political life of the people.
Mhm.
To me, that is what changed me. You know, I did Become, the building intercultural competencies in the Archdiocese of Colorado. And I was presenting the 4 pillars of the church. And when I got to that pillar of liberation, there was a priest who stood up and questioned me and challenged me. And his bishop was there. And I'm a lay person, and I am not a theological student. I'm not a student of theology. He questioned, why am I teaching liberation theology? And in response, plainly, it's one of the pillars of the church, liberation, to get involved in the socioeconomic life of the people, socioeconomic and political life. And he was so dissatisfied because I don't have that degree. But you know, God takes care of all of us. God took care of Nida. There was a nun who stood up bravely and just went through the whole process of why we have liberation theology. And still, you know, we cannot satisfy everyone. His reaction was he stood up and walked out. So it's really, yeah, he walked out of the class. So it's up to us. Sometimes it's hard for us to open our eyes and our ears to the cry of the poor. Or we are so dedicated and we are just within that 4 walls of the classroom of what we know. Because, yeah, most likely he took theology, right? And they studied liberation. But sometimes it takes a deeper understanding of that word or of what we're talking about here. And so maybe it would help, like when I go to my presentation and it's all about practical praxis, we may have a little understanding of that as well. We just need to be open to the sign of the times. I think Dan mentioned that, and Ursula. So I think that's very good. Any other comments? It's really a very hard matter, subject.
Miss Nida, this is
I do.
Bettina.
Oh, you do. Okay.
Hi, Bettina. Is it Bettina?
I'll try to follow up on what you said about liberation theology, but I'll insert my experience on it and also what Father Ben said about Exodus experience. I think, you know, most Catholics are probably weak in reading scripture, but I think we should be reading scripture and really understanding the message of the Exodus experience. And Father Ben was saying that it is the classic normative expression of what solidarity is about. And because we see the, you know, to hear the cry, know the suffering, to come down from where we are, to deliver them, and to bring them up to an alternative way of life. So, and Father Ben was also telling us to take the initiative out of love to understand this mystery of the incarnation. I think it's all from there. If, if we, in our hearts, we believe that God participated in our fleshness so he can elevate mankind, so we can participate in the holiness of God. That's what he was saying. And it's really pondering that thought of God is with us, Emmanuel. And from there, I don't know, it's just automatic that it seems that the love commandment, we will just do that. I don't know why, but it's just it's just comes naturally. I think I heard that we can see God in the homeless, and we just participate in the building up of the kingdom of God. So I believe that it's from the Exodus experience that all Catholics should know the meaning of that and pondering the mystery of the incarnation. Yeah.
Let's pray for that. Anybody else?
Yes. I do.
Okay.
This is Sylvia. Okay, since my grandmother raised most of all the grandchildren, and stuff, and my grandmother taught us this since we were little, that we always there will always be poor, but we always have to help them, but we start in our families first. And the reason we do this is so that we can learn not to be so selfish. And when we recognize other people, and also that God and Jesus is in everyone. So the way we treat the poor is the way we are treating God and Jesus. And God and Jesus looks at that to see how much we have learned of his wisdom on building up his kingdom. But we always start with our own family first, of helping them before we reach out into the community, and make sure our whole family is together, relatives and all that, is together so that we can do things for others. I had a uncle who was very wealthy. He had a ranch, and for every 2 years, for 3 days, he would feed the whole city in Mexico. And some of the relatives would fly out there to help out. And he fed them for 3 whole days, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and had music for them to show the poor how much he cared for them. But that's what we did in our family till he died recently. And then we kind of stopped it, and it's like we need to continue it on somehow.
That's wonderful. We wish everyone who has money would be like that. The third question. Sorry. What was new to you in the presentation and solidarity in the tradition of the church?
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah. Yes, my name is Columba Paloma, and what is new for me, the presentation really is like when Fray Ben mentioned we are a family in this world, but we are brothers and sisters, and we have to look for peaceful. And he mentioned the globalization in 1997 start more poor people, and this is the main for now. The goal. Look for the poor people. But the question you say is what's new for me? For me, it's like I want to be medical worker for everyone. Start with my family. It's hard because to look at what happened in my family. and my cousins and everybody in my own family and others. So it's like it's a new challenges. So I think it's my first goal to start looking and others, and it's new for me that the world like medical for everyone. And it's like he said, we can do it because they have for respect life for everyone, for dignity. We have programs, and we have to go to be in faith, pray, spiritual, and action. But we have to do it. It's like my new job now today. Start in that, right? It's my new. Thank you, Nadia.
Very good. Very good. And we'll talk more about that.
Yeah.
About providing medical for all,
yes,
no matter what your status is.
Yes.
There's a bill, Health for All. Okay. Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Teresa Lozada, and I think one of the things, solidarity is bigger than I ever thought. You know, when I think of, I thought, I'm praying, I'm helping wherever I can, to the least, or to the poor. But it's more than that, as it was mentioned, how he brought it through the tradition of the church, how Father used the Old Testament and brought the New Testament in and just incorporated solidarity in it. It was like a new set of eyes for me. But to understand that solidarity is, like I said, more. For a moment, I kind of felt useless. Like what was my prayer, was whatever I was doing, it wasn't enough. It's like, how am I going to impact the rich? How am I going to have them change their ways? So for a moment, it's like I feel useless. Like whatever I was doing was not enough. But like I said, it brought new eyes to this word of solidarity. Nada más una perspectiva, ¿verdad?, de solidaridad, que es algo, es mucho más grande de lo que yo pensaba. Pensaba en mis oraciones, en ayudar, ¿verdad?, al más desvalido, al más pobre, que estaba haciendo mi parte, pero veo que es mucho más grande que eso. Compartí que a veces me sentía como como que lo que yo hacía no es suficiente. ¿Cómo voy a impactar yo? ¿Cómo voy a hacer que el rico cambie su forma de ser? Que vea a los pobres, que no abuse de ellos en cuestión de salarios, etcétera. Y como el padre Ben, ¿verdad?, trajo la enseñanza de la Biblia, del Viejo Testamento al Nuevo Testamento, y lo incorporó a la solidaridad. Gracias.
Thank you. Gracias. I was so in awe with the opening remarks of Sister Chile. Remember what she said? Solidarity is really hard. And that's what you had just mentioned, Teresa. It's hard to wrap my hands around it. And we all think, oh, this is good enough for us. But remember what Sister Chile said? How many people have gone through these classes? And yet, how many people we see at the end, really? Because it's very hard to imagine that all the work we're doing is right there at the rim, or not deep enough is what you're saying, from what I understood you. It's right here at the top. I need to go deeper now, because now I have a better understanding of what solidarity is all about. And that's why we're having this class, is to arouse that. It's this class that's helping us also to gain a better understanding of the bigger meaning, not only of solidarity, but of our faith as Catholics.
That's why it's sometimes hard to comprehend. And how do we present this? And that was earlier, you know, it's really difficult to present this to people, to my friends who have. Anybody else?
Anida.
Uh-huh.
The one that comes to my mind is the one that was mentioned in the Bible, 1 Corinthians 11, verse 18 to 22, which recognizes the disunity or factions in the church. But St. Paul said that there must be faction among you in order that those who are genuine among you may be recognized. So this to me came up when I was bringing up the difficulties in achieving solidarity among us. And I am reminded also of what St. Paul mentioned about saying that, we need unbelievers. They provide us with the opportunity of knowing clearly what we believe. So it's something to think about when we encounter people who are antagonistic or are critical of what we're doing about charity and justice. And you know, it gives me peace of mind knowing that it's not me alone, but God is also there because He knows what is going on. So we have to keep on praying and trust that God will help us in His time.
Yeah, very good comment, Dan. Remember, the peace of Christ is different from our own personal experience of peace. Remember what Father Ben said about the peace of Christ? The peace of Christ seeks for justice and confronts complexity. Whereas, hey, my peace, leave me alone. I want some silence. I don't want violence. But to have Christ's peace and love for the poor, that's the solidarity aspect of it. All right, thank you. Jose Luis, what do you think? Should we break early, a little bit early for lunch?
That's fine for me.
So I am going to talk about the practice of solidarity, experiences and lessons learned at the local level, national, international. Mine's like the practicum. And it all begins with us. We talked about the difficulty we're having and just embracing this big word, the deepening of our faith based on solidarity. And how do we invite those, our friends, who may be well off, and we're happy that they're giving their big donations to the church. But as we've learned in Father Ben's presentation, it's not all about that. You know, I came here from the Philippines many years ago, because most of my life I've lived here. And when I was in the Philippines, I had really seeing the lives of the poor, I was numb to that. I didn't see them.
You know, and sometimes we are the same way here. We don't see the people, the poor around us. And I never did. I went to a university, University of the Philippines. And in reality, in real life, that university is very active. A lot of activists came from that university. And yet I did not see that either, because I stayed in the dormitory, and plus I was dropped off or picked up. And I could not get involved in any political life of the people. Coming here in the United States, all my thinking was there's always a separation of church and state, because that's how I was raised. Politics, there's no place in the church. And it was not until I became the chairperson of the Filipino Ministry DSB when we implemented the program. It was an exposure program, immersion, back to my roots, which is the Philippines. And yes, fortunately, I had a Father Ben with my family who brought us to see and live the lives of the poor when we went and stayed with the Lumad, which is the indigenous people in the Philippines. And my first thought was, why are you taking me here? I want to go back home where I am comfortable, where my life is, you know, I don't have to be bothered with seeing the poorest of the poor, the marginalized. And he brought us to the school. It was the San Luis Lumad Community High School, which is a school that he founded. And the school was being run by nuns, and now it's going to be taken over by the Missionaries of Sacred Heart. So at that time, my first question was, are you trying to convert the indigenous people to become Catholics? And guess what his response was? And one of you commented on that. Well, how can we see Christ in these people who are indigenous and not even Christians, right? But his response was, we do not convert, but they'll find their conversion when they see your God in you. We cannot be worrying about others, how to convert them, because that time will come. But we need to concern ourselves. Are we living the life of Christ? And that was the turning point in my life, because I had so many questions. They had so many, to me, it was like pagan practices. Why am I here to see this? I don't need to see this. I'm a Christian. I have Christian belief. But you know, they are also God's people. So coming back here to the Diocese of San Bernardino, I had taken classes, and as a matter of fact, the other day I was reviewing my certificates because I know I've taken Salt and Light. And that was way back in 2002. And Sister Chile said, you know, it started in the early 2000. I was in the CMFP class, started in the early 2000. So it's been many years. But did I take action immediately? It's the same thing that Sister said. How many of us have graduated and still have not applied what we've learned? So sometimes it takes a while, and sometimes it takes a personal exposure and immersion. And no, you don't have to go to another country to see that, because we can see. We have migrants and refugees in the Coachella Valley. And sometimes us Catholics refuse to admit them, and yet they're here. It reminds me of all of these things that I've learned
since 2002, where charity comes with social justice. And I've read that impact statement over and over about society. We need to recognize the joys and the hopes, the griefs and the anxieties of our world, especially the poor. We accept the call to be light for the world. But unless we take that to heart, then it's hard for us to really move forward. That's on my experience. I had a difficult time. I've lost friends because of what I tried to live. Remember, somebody also cited it, James. Prayer without action is dead. And that's when I realized, yeah, I could pray all night. And the poor needs this, the poor need that, and I can give it and give it and give it. But unless I take a deeper role to be the voice for the voiceless and put my prayer into action, I have not converted. I have not been Christ-like because it's difficult. It's not something that will change us immediately. And some of us have done that. It doesn't matter who you are. In our church so big, the Catholic Church, not all of us, religious and lay, are on the same belief. We have different interpretation of what it is, of what we need to do. Why do you think some of our clergy are afraid to talk about the social teachings of the church? And maybe I'm the only one experiencing that I don't hear so much about the social teachings of the church. They say it's the biggest secret of the church, the social teachings. And that's why only a few are in it. Dan mentioned that, the others have mentioned that. What will it take for us to become the voice for the voiceless, to be involved in the social, economic, and political life of the people? It takes a lot of conversion. And maybe we do need to see, open, remember, see, hear, and act. And it's just around us. So this is my question for you. And I was suggesting to Jose Luis that maybe we could do a breakout session or discussion on these. Or do you want it in a big group? It's good to hear everybody's, response. Because I'm sure each one of you have had your personal encounter. Why are you here in this class? And what is still hindering you from living and acting Christ-like? How was your discussion?
Short. Great.
Very short.
What brought you here in this ministry? Why do you want to be a deacon? Or, something must have happened in your life, right? And now you're in for it.
Yes, it is.
We needed
it's bigger than what you thought. But something must have happened in your life that caused you to really be passionate about what you're doing and spending all these years of studying. There's something there that got you. There must be a miracle that happened, right? I don't know how you were divided or which group, but can we have a volunteer to share from each group?
I'll volunteer for.
Okay.
Carl, you're muted.
Who is it?
It's Carl.
Carl, thank you.
Yes. We had a mixed group, Spanish and English, and but we came together with our translating and getting it. But the general consensus is for us, not so much the miracle, but the challenge for us. We all have experience working with the poor. We're continuing, we're still doing that. Realize some people don't want the help. Some people want immediate satisfaction, whether it be cigarettes, alcohol, whatever that might be. Some really need it, but then some don't know or are aware of the help, or or exposure to that help. And then there's those who may just need spiritual help or guidance in that realm. So not so much a physical thing, but a spiritual, moral kind of a thing right there. And then a better communication with the poor.
You're breaking.
Which was very profound, what assumptions of people or preconceived ideals, not to question, but to help unconditionally. And for him, it was said to help unconditionally. It changed his heart, his perspective of looking at those less fortunate than himself, which helped his son, who picked up the mantle and was running with what he learned about helping those unconditionally out of love, because that's my brother. And so we came to a conclusion that a change of heart is a change of perspective. So for us, we got to change our hearts. We can think it, but if we don't change our hearts, then we can't do anything about it. And then the last was this unconditional love, which equals a help, which equals the acceptance of a person, which equals the dignity of the person. So we don't come off being haughty and not so much above it. We meet them where they're at, because we're no more important or more or have anything more than they have. We're all a step away from living on a park bench, more or less.
Right. Any other comments from that group? All right. Do you find that unconditional love so hard to do?
Sí.
No, acá no.
No? Yes?
Gilbert, I think you was raising your hand. Gilberto? Do you want to say something, Gilberto?
Oh, Gilberto's down here.
No?
No estabas traduciendo, ¿verdad, Elsa? Apenas comenzaste. Ok.
Sorry, Neida. It's a little interruption with the translation. Yeah. Then, who else raised their hand?
Armando, I saw Armando raised his hand.
Okay. Armando, and then Dan.
I raised my hand because they were asking about the translation. But yeah, but it's okay. I can make a comment. Well, what I comment in my in the group is that when I first encountered God, it changed my life completely. Y when I started following Jesus, like Carl says, we cannot sin very comfortable, you know. When we encounter Jesus, something changes inside you. So things that we usually do very comfortable, now we cannot do it. And that change goes 24 hours a day. And every single moment, I am thinking about what I'm doing good and what I'm not doing, what I'm doing wrong, you know. And about the mission, when first I encountered Jesus, I wanted to serve, but I didn't want to serve inside four walls. I didn't want to serve to say, let's say, in a group in the parish. So what I did is I started to serve outside. I started to serve in the federal facilities and prisons Bureau of Prison Federal Facilities in Adelanto. And I serve in the four prisons over there, and 2 in the sheriff that is in Adelanto too. So, and those facilities, and I also serve in homeless, and I also serve in a facility for kids. But my point is, I'm moving outside of the 4 walls of the parish. So that's my motivation to go into the diaconate formation.
I have a question for you.
Uh-huh.
When did you realize that something has happened in your life and you need to move forward with it? Were you always like that, a person who loved to serve? Was there any conversion?
No, well, all my brothers and sisters in diaconate formation knows about it. I'm gonna tell you over here. My conversion was not in church or in a how do you say, retreat or something like that. I have an issue with one of my sisters. She got possessed for a demon, 2 or 3 demons, and we went to exorcist. We were very in touch with Bishop Rutilio del Riego.
Mm-hmm.
We did all that stuff, and because of that, I noticed. I said, okay, if there's a devil, if the devil exists, so God also exists. So I started, and that moment I said, okay, I'm going to follow Jesus from now on, and I'm going to give you my life, and that's the break point on my life. So. And at that moment, I said, I'm gonna serve you, I'm gonna follow you, but I don't want to follow you in the comfort of an office, you know. I want to serve you in something more outside. That was
excellent.
That was a break point.
Excellent. You're gonna carry what you're learning now also outside. So we're counting on you to be among the few who have chosen to live their lives in solidarity. Anybody else?
Paul?
Yeah, I'll share my little story that I shared with our group. In my former parish, before I moved to Upland, I lived in Corona for quite some time, and I was a member of St. Mary Magdalene. And at some point, I decided to help out with the peace and justice ministry, which, you know, did some good work there at St. Mary Magdalene. But it came a time that when immigration issues were coming to the forefront, and every day we would see in the news the refugees coming from Central America, in particular El Salvador, and Nicaragua, and the other nation. And what really pained me was seeing the faces of these children that were without parents, that were, you know, looking for asylum and in search of a desperate search for economic justice, and their parents, the heartstrings are being torn by basically letting their children cross the border to an unknown certainty in our country. And of course, we saw all the hostility. And so I felt a need to start up a ministry, and what's called the Sal y Luz, Salt and Light. And this was at the time when these children were, and we had, you know, people in Murrieta, we had people in our diocese basically that were violently opposed to these immigrants and to these children coming to, looking for refuge, and it was a lawful refuge at the time. They had a legal standing to enter our country, but still there was this opposition. And so one of the things that we did is, we organized a little things from time to time. One event was an education session about the immigration issues of the day. And I invited the entire parish to come. Of course, we only had maybe a handful of people, 15, 20, or maybe even less than that. But there was a couple of gentlemen that were there from our parish. One in particular I knew, who had been in the parish for quite some time. And so he was basically talking about how anyone that, crossed the borders without any type of legal authorization violated our laws and, should not be granted any type of legal status. And so at one point, there was a conversation between him and another fellow in our ministry or part of our Peace and Justice ministry, which we were still part of, Sol y Luz. And the question that the anti-immigrant parishioner posed was, well, do you consider these immigrants brothers and sisters? And so the fellow who the question was posed to, paused for a moment, and he answered in the affirmative, said, yes, they are my brothers and sisters. There's no question about that. And so there was a pause. Everyone in the room kind of had to think about that a little bit. That was my aha moment. The moment that Jesus came to me and saying, I guess you're doing something that's good, that you're raising the level of knowledge of people, even though you don't have a lot of people there. I'm sure the word got out that someone basically said something to someone else, but that had a big impact on me that moment.
Very good. Anytime we talk about social justice, not too many people attend, right? Do you guys agree? But when we call people for worship or prayer meeting, a lot attend. Why do you think that?
Dan?
Oh, okay. Now, this is a comment on what Naida mentioned a while ago. She graduated from UP. University of the Philippines is the seat of political activism, usually during the 60s and the 70s especially. And I was a graduate of that university as well. And that's why I understand what Naida is saying. One really has to have some experience engaging with workers, with the peasants, with the poor, in order to understand what their conditions are. And this actually changed me in a way, because I understood what they were fighting for. And when you understand something that you believe, then you can act on that belief. Just like what the Bible says about the parables of the sower. If the seed is sown on the falls on the pathway, then those who receive the word will fail to understand it. So the birds or the devils will rob you of your faith. Just like in, but if you understand the word of God, then it will multiply, it will grow productively. In the same token, in the Luke 7, when you build a house on the rock, based on the rock, then it will withstand all the the tornado or the floods, and it will not be shaken that's like your faith and your belief will not be shaken. So I think it's important to really understand what solidarity is, what the conditions of the people, the poor people are undergoing, in order for us to do the right thing. Otherwise, it will just be lip service. We just want to believe on something, but it stays there. That's the gap of discipleship, faith in action. In the Filipino ministry, where I am, that I belong in, we are actually reinventing our pastoral commission so that we can address the needs of the poor, of the immigrants, of the homeless, of those who are needy. So we're seeing things with a new eye, so to speak.
Amen to that. Anybody else? The other groups. Do I see hands raised?
Yo puedo compartir.
Oh, shit.
Fatima?
We have somebody that wants to share in Spanish.
Oh, shit.
Adelante, Fátima.
Gracias, José Luis. Bueno, puedo compartir un poco basado en la pregunta que nos hizo, sabiendo que nuestro encuentro es diferente porque estoy en esta clase. Entonces, para mí mi respuesta es apreciando todo lo que nuestros compañeros han compartido. Estoy en esta clase por algo, yo creo que es pues el plan de Dios, ¿no? Les dije a mis compañeros que no somos una coincidencia. Estar en este mundo, vivir en este tiempo con ustedes no es una coincidencia. Entonces somos un plan de Dios. Sin embargo, hace unos años en mi vida sucedió algo muy extraño que para mí sigue siendo un misterio hasta la fecha, en base un testimonio similar a lo que nuestro compañero Armando compartió, que cosas que están por encima de nuestra imaginación. Entonces yo comencé a buscar ayuda y en esa ayuda fue mi refugio en la Biblia, porque busqué ayuda profesional, psicológica y no encontraba respuestas. Entonces yo quería como comerme la Biblia buscando respuestas a lo que estaba yo transcurriendo, sintiendo en mi vida, y al final creo que no hay... o sea, solo somos que nuestro destino es o el bien o el mal. Y estamos o para servirle a Dios o para no estar con Dios. Eso es como que despertó tanto en mi manera de pensar y de vivir, cuando Dios dice en la palabra que nos quiere o bien fríos o bien calientes, ¿verdad? Que porque a los tibios nos vomita. Y se me hizo tan fuerte esa palabra, y está escrito, es palabra divina, que yo decía, ¿por qué estoy en esta vida aquí? ¿Por qué estoy aquí? Entonces, aquí sigo aprendiendo de Dios. Yo sé que hay muchas necesidades a través del mundo, muchísimas. Estudié la carrera de cuidado pastoral. En su mayoría asisto a personas adultas, pero sin embargo sus necesidades muchas veces no son físicas, de salud, en cuestión de salud. Sus necesidades son que no pueden hacer lo que nosotros hacemos, entonces yo les ayudo con la limpieza de su casa y todo. Y yo en un momento me pregunté y decía, cuidado pastoral, ¿es hacer limpieza de casas? Entonces yo sola me respondí, dije, si voy a servir a Dios, sí.
Si voy a servir a Dios y ellos me necesitan para limpiar su baño, para hacer sus camas, para hacer su ropa, sí, porque yo quiero servir a Dios y voy a hacerlo en donde Él me necesite. Y así estoy, entonces trato de ser soy mi mayor challenge, como nos dijo Sister en esta mañana, que dice que este es un challenge. Entonces yo digo que yo soy mi mayor desafío, desafiarme a mí misma para poder ayudar a mi prójimo. El Padre también nos dijo, el Padre Ben, que es negarnos a nosotros mismos, y es en lo que yo trato de hacerlo, negarme a mí misma. Y pues aquí estoy. Gracias.
¿Puedes decir algo de eso en inglés?
Yeah. Can you interpret, somebody?
Nuestra
Bueno,
compañera va a traducir.
No, queríamos ver si tú querías decir algo en inglés tú misma.
Yo misma. Okay. I was trying to say that we are here, or I am here my answer is according to the question. And as you know, we are different. Why I'm here taking this class? Then my answer is that we are not a coincidence. I think even if we are living during this season, not in the past, currently, then we are not a coincidence. Everything turns into God, or like our brother Armando said, that also the evil is real. So God is real, the evil is real, who I am going to serve. And I decided to serve God. So I have to be the best possible according as I know what Jesus did, and follow his example to do the best possible. I am not perfect, I'm not saint, but we are called to be his disciples. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anaida, Fatima also said that she's working in a pastoral care field, taking care of adults, and many of those adults, they don't have precisely, they are not precisely suffering because of their illnesses, but because they are alone, but because they need support in very simple matters such as cleaning or organizing their home, cleaning the bathroom, and she started to do that. And so at some point she said, "Did I study pastoral care to clean the bathroom and clean the house? No, but I am doing it because I am following God's plan, and I'm serving him through these services." So I think it was a nice example.
Yes, very humbling.
Testimony.
I said to myself, if I want to serve God, yes, I have to do this because I am doing it for God.
Mm-hmm.
Very humbling.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Your personal experience, your conversion, what brought you here to this class? I mean, what change in values do you have? Even now, after our first session.
Do you want to say something?
Yes.
Go ahead.
For me, the concept of solidarity is basically a concept that is embedded in my culture, starting like from the family level, the community level. Like, for example, when we talk of the family level, the family is not just husband, wife, and the kids. It extends to uncle, cousins, grandparents, granduncles, and stuff like that. In such a way that, if, for example, if my father sees his brother that cannot take care of his child, my father automatically will just step in and take care of that child as his own child. And it happens like that in my country everywhere. And this
from that aspect of the family to the community level is the same thing. If, for example, a family is bereaved, the community come together, like they contribute money, some contribute food, and they just go to that family, and the family will get everything necessary to deal with the situation. So that is how I've been growing to know solidarity in my community. So when I come like to the university, I'm studying things like solidarity. It brings me back to my own community. I said, but this is already something that we have been practicing without studying it. So it is, for example, if they're building a church in my my community, people donate money to even the people who don't have, right? Say, okay, good, I don't have money to give, but I will offer my labor. They will go there one in a day or so, and they will contribute by doing something to help build the church physically. So for me, that is solidarity, and it is the way also I look at it. It is not only those that have or those that are rich that have to give. Even those that do not have can actually participate in solidarity by doing the best they can, by doing something to the best of their ability. So when I look at solidarity at the way I grew up, it's really, really different from, for example, we used to say a child is called yours only when that child is in your womb. But when the child is out of your womb, it is a child of the community. It's no longer yours. So the child belongs to the community. And also there is what we always say, you are because I am. And I am because you are. So when this concept of like when I first came to the United States, I see like the way the family operates. Is for me, it was a little bit different because the family is very, very broad. Very, very broad. Even the concept of marriage is not a marriage between a man and a woman. It is broader. It is two families coming together. That is how we call marriage in my place. If the two families in addition to the fact that the couple will agree, they also want the two families to come together. So it's very, very, the concept of solidarity for me is something that we have been growing up with, doing without even, so when I come and I'm studying solidarity, the image that quickly comes to my mind is how the community in which I was growing up, seeing how they were putting this stuff together, living, supporting one another, helping the kids of those that do not have to be something and stuff like that.
Very true. You see more of that in collective, what we define as collective communities. Yeah. Basically, because in the US, it's in general an individualistic society. But when you come from a collective society, such as yours and other third world countries, then solidarity is easier to grasp. Yeah. Any other comments?
I think Sylvia raised her hand.
Okay,
Yeah,
Sylvia.
I'll try to make it short. All my life, my grandmother has always taught us, you know, the Catholic values. I've always gone to church on Sunday, gone to catechism till 12th grade, you know, did all that stuff, sent my kids to Catholic school and everything. And I've always did Bible studies, and I've always read and read books on God and everything. And then finally, you know, I wanted to do more, and I was helping at the church, but it was not enough. And then where I live, I moved. We didn't know this, but we moved next door to people that make drugs. And they were constantly fighting with me, no matter what. I'd wash the driveway off. They would say, you can't wash the driveway off. But I have a big yard, and I have eagles and owls that are my trees. And so when they poop, it's a mess, and I have to hose it off. And well, anyway, anything I did, they would fight with me on things. And so I had a spiritual director, but with them fighting with me, and I was trying not to get upset and everything, I ended up getting cancer. The cancer was past stage 4, which was in my organs. And I kept going to the doctors and telling him something was wrong. And he said, no, you're a picture of health, you know, for my age. And I'm going to be 70 years old this next month. So they would say, no, you know, and so they did a physical, and they said, oh, nothing's wrong with you. Well, then I went back, and I would not move from my doctor's office. And I said, you better do tests on me, because I'm not moving. You're gonna have to get somebody to get me out of here. And she said, all right, lift up your blouse. And so I did. And she said, oh my God, you're past stage 4 cancer. She says, there's no way you're gonna live. You might as well start, you know, getting things in order, because you're dying. And so I went home and I called Father Humphrey, because I used to talk to him like 3 times a week and visit him and stuff. And I was in the Legion of Mary with him. And he said, you're not going to die. I said, no, they said I was going to die. They're not going to do anything for me. They said that I was too far gone. It was in my, you know, in my organs and everything. And I said, and even my breath smells really awful, like I'm decaying inside. And they had told me I had just like not even like a month to live. And so I talked to Father Humphrey, and then I went home. I told my husband, he didn't believe me. He said I was making this up. He says, I don't believe you. Why are you making this story up? You're just, you know, why? He says, you don't lie to me, and you're lying to me. So I went outside, and I heard a voice tell me, what is it that you want? I mean, where I live, I had a lot of animals, turkeys, ducks, chickens, you know, all these, a bunch of animals. And they were all quiet when I heard this voice. And I said, I want to live. And I know we're not supposed to ask for that. And I said, I want to live. And the voice said, you are going to live. I said, oh no, but the doctors all said, I said, 3 doctors said I'm not going to live. And the voice said, you are going to live. And so then he said, what else do you want? And I said, I want to follow you. If you're God, I want to follow you and do your work. So then the voice went away, and all the animals, I heard them talking and everything. So I told my mom, and my mom didn't believe me. She says, why are you lying to me? She says, you're lying to me. I said, no, I'm not. Nobody would believe me. But anyway, I lived. I'm kind of still fighting with the neighbors, because I am not fighting. They fight with me because they make drugs. I call the fire department. The fire department won't do anything. They tell me to get away from the house. I said, how can I live next door to them? And the police won't go down there. The last time the police came to my house was a few months ago, and they sent the SWAT team to my house. And because there's always gunshots, and they shoot my windows with their guns and stuff, but I could never prove who did it because they do it at night. And anyway, God, I kept praying to God, and he says, I want you to learn to have more courage. I said, but I do have courage. I lived through the cancer. I said, part of my brain was black from it being dead, and you restored it. I said, my knees are bone on bone. They keep telling me that I should be in a wheelchair and I should be in pain. And I run and exercise and I dance and I do all that stuff. And I said, I don't know what else to do. And that's the reason I'm in these classes.
Wow, that gave me goosebumps. You know, sometimes it takes something, and I believe in miracles because I'm also a miracle. My doctor said I was going to die too. And I couldn't walk or breathe. But God has been asking me, let go, Naida. I was so worried I won't have any money because I was just in my 50s when I retired. And I go, but I don't have any money. I can't retire. And he says, I have another plan for you. But I didn't believe him until that day that I went to the doctor, and my neurologist said, you need to be carrying an oxygen tank and you need to be on wheelchair. I go, I'm not doing that. Lord, I am retiring today. So I called the court, the Superior Court. You won't see me anymore. But you know, that changed my life. And here I am. He just wanted me to do something else. So we are miracles. Yes, and anybody else? Yes, Rosario?
Yes. Escuchando lo que están hablando, me llamó mucho la atención y sí, claro, yo estoy en esta clase porque para aprender a ser más solidario, para aprender más cómo ayudar a los demás. Y como dijo nuestra querida Neira, yo también soy un milagro porque cuando mi mamá se dio cuenta que me estaba esperando a mí, el doctor la obligó a que me abortara, pero ella no quiso, porque yo venía destrozado, según el médico, destrozado porque ella empezó a tomar mucho alcohol sin saber que me estaba esperando. Y pues gracias a Dios ella se aferró a tenerme y aquí estoy dando lata, ¿verdad? Tratando de servirle a Dios. Pero con el tiempo me lastimé en el trabajo y me deshabilitaron por el Workers' Camp, pero por el Seguro Social no me querían deshabilitar porque tenía 41 años. Decían, puedes trabajar aunque sea en silla de ruedas o agarrándole los recibos a la gente en las tiendas, pero no te podemos deshabilitar. Tuve que ir a ver una juez para que me aceptaran mi disability. Y la juez lo que me dijo, dice, te voy a decir algo, pero no te vayas a hacer daño, porque lo que te voy a decir es algo muy, muy duro. Entonces dice, prométeme que no te vas a hacer daño. Y cuando yo le dije, no, pues lo que sea, dice, pues ya qué más puedo esperar, dice, pero no te vas a hacer daño. Le dije, no, yo te lo prometo. Dice, tú ya no sirves para nada. Así me dijo cruelmente. Tú ya quedaste hecho pedazos de tu espalda, de tu cuello, de tus manos, de tu cintura. Tú ya nadie da un pene ni un cacahuate por ti. Y yo te autorizo que te den tu disability de por vida. Y si tú ya no puedes trabajar. Y cuando llegué empecé a ir a la iglesia. Y estando en la iglesia, le pidieron ayuda a un joven para la colecta. Yo andaba con mi walkie, apenas podía caminar. Cuando el joven le contestó al coordinador de los sugieres, le dijo, ¿y yo por qué? Y yo escuché una voz por dentro, como dijo la hermana, que me dijo, ¿y tú por qué no? Entonces yo sentí eso que me dije, ¿yo por qué no? Me levanté a ayudar, así como andaba, y de ahí para acá empecé a sentir ese deseo de ser solidario con los demás, de ser útil. Y ahí fue donde Dios me demostró que no servía tal vez para trabajar en lo pesado, pero para servirle a Él, sí podía servir. Y por eso estoy aquí en esta clase, a estas clases, para poder servir mejor. Y no sé cómo traducírsela en inglés, si alguien me puede ayudar.
Yeah, Naida, brothers and sisters, Rosario is giving a testimony of how he is here with us. He said that even from born, his mother was drinking too much alcohol. She didn't know that she was pregnant. And the doctor asked her to have an abortion because the child was affected by the alcohol. But she decided not to abort him. And he is alive now, but later on, working here in the company, he was hurt and damaged his back, his collar, legs, and basically everything. So and it was difficult to get disability because they want him to even do something from a wheelchair. But he appealed and went to court, and the judge told him, "I want to tell you something very, very sad, but you're not worthy of nothing. You're trash. You're here for nothing. So I want to authorize your disability for life." So in that condition, he started going to the church with a walker. One of the ushers asked him to ask a person to help, and the person said no, but he said, "I'll do it." He woke up and started doing it, and he's now here trying to be a deacon.
Amen. That's right. God has a different plan for you.
Yeah, amen.
Anybody else? There are some people from whom we have not heard. I saw Pedro with a smile, with a grin. Would you like to share your experience? You have that big grin. We want to hear about it.
Oh God.
Oh God.
¿Qué podemos? My English is not so well, so I'm going to try to in Spanish first. We see what I can do. Mi experiencia ha sido siempre la misma, de servir desde joven. Siempre he servido. A los 20 años ya estaba en la iglesia sirviendo. Serví hasta el año 2000 con los ministerios de la cárcel, ministerios de diferentes formas. Siempre tratando de darle consuelo a las personas, tratando de vivir una vida llegada al ministerio, enseñando la palabra, viendo cómo ayudar, sirviendo en la iglesia en muchas formas. Pero en un tiempo salí fuera y todo, y por 4, 5, 6, 7 años estuve fuera del servicio. Ahora que regresé, cuando regresé hace ya varios años, empecé de nuevo. Pero ahora con estas clases en Charity, en Sal y Luz, recibí un mensaje diferente de mi vida. Siempre he tratado de servir en lo que puedo, pero ahora en esto veo una cualidad que no la había visto de la iglesia, que es el servicio a los demás, pero no como caridad ni como evangelista, sino con un servicio para ver las necesidades de los demás, ser solidario con las demás personas, saber cómo llevar a las demás personas a un mejor camino, a conocer realmente sus necesidades, no darles caridad, sino ver sus necesidades para ver cómo resolverlas. Ahora, hoy en esta clase, hubo un momento que me llamó mucho la atención, lo que dijo el padre Ben, cuando llamó la solidaridad, la llamó un sacramento. No sé si lo escucharon, que él dijo que era un sacramento. Yo me equivoqué Y de ese momento empecé a pensar qué son los sacramentos para nosotros, cómo los tenemos los sacramentos para nosotros, como el bautismo, como la comunión, como la confesión y todo. Son sacramentos para nosotros. Entonces decía yo, como la solaridad puede ser un sacramento para nosotros. Y pensando, me di cuenta que es como cuando es el ministro de la Eucaristía. En la Eucaristía, cuando vas a ser ministro, te enseñan a cómo ser un buen ejemplo para las demás personas, cómo ser una buena persona para poder dar la Eucaristía y todo. Entonces, ahora veo en mí que nos está enseñando la iglesia y nuestro Señor nos está enseñando cómo es la solaridad, de que nosotros debemos de llevar ese sacramento a otras personas. Debemos de llevar esa comunión, no importa cómo la reciban ellos. Cuando damos la Eucaristía, la recibe si en pecado o no en pecado, es personal. No vamos a preguntarle si está en pecado o no, ¿verdad? Simplemente damos la Eucaristía. Lo mismo en la solaridad, digo. ¿Cómo la recibe un homeless? ¿Cómo la recibe un pobre? ¿Cómo la recibe un necesitado? Ya no es tanto el problema de nosotros, sino de Dios, que va a decir, al momento que tú des esa solaridad con Él, te enfoques en Él y vivas con Él, Dios va a ser el camino. Dios lo va a llevar, como estaban diciendo. Nosotros no podemos ir y convertir a las personas. Nosotros nos convertimos nosotros y en la conversión de nosotros, ellos la van a ver y es como Dios los va a convertir. Eso es lo que me llama mucho la atención ahorita en todo esto. Y en nuestro grupo no pudimos compartir. Nuestro grupo no nos alcanzó el tiempo, nomás compartieron 2 parejas, quedó una pareja sin compartir y pues no pudimos tener mucho diálogo. Pero yo sé que las otras 2 personas que quedaron sin compartir también tenían algo que decir. En lo que a mí coincide, eso es lo que me llama mucho la atención ahorita. Estar en este grupo me ha llenado de felicidad y me ha llenado un hueco que yo tenía, que siempre he querido dar al servicio del Señor, y ese hueco lo estoy llenando ahorita, gracias a Dios, y espero poder ser parte de algún grupo donde pueda trabajar en todo esto. Gracias.
Gracias. José Luis, can you, who's gonna interpret that?
Pedro, want to say something in English?
It's hard for me to say.
Okay, we understand. I picked up here and there, but I couldn't understand everything.
Yeah. Let me try a little bit only. Okay, what I say is only all the time I try to serve God. Since 20 years old, I started working, helping in the church and every ministries. I work in the jail and different things. But in 2000 or something like that, I left for 5, 6, 7 years out of the church because I put my mind on working for get money, for get my family together. But after that, I go back to the church and I started serving again and everything. And I still try to evangelize to people, try to help her and whatever I can, give it some, anything I can give it to them. But I never think on what we got now. When I started to get these classes, like Soul and Luz, and now Charity and Justice, when I started these classes, they give me another life. They give me different way to see everything. Now it's not, I don't think so, just give it some, help a little bit of the people. Now I need to look in what is the problem is, how do I can help you, how do we can fix the things, you know? That's my conversion now. That's what I think now, what I do, how I can do it. And I hope one of these days, or I hope in the future, I can working with some different communities and that team, you know. That's what I'm thinking right now. Try to see if I can work in this community right here where I live, or can go another community, no matter. And I'm going to be retired pretty soon, so I can go wherever I can service, you know. So that's what I'm looking at it, and that's what I get it to me.
Very good.
You know, and something I say about the solarity was the sacrament. The Benny says that solarity is one like sacrament. For me, it's more than that, and for me to thinking in that is I have to give that to everybody. I don't know how to say really good, but it's like when we give it the community to the people. We give it the community. So if you are a minister on the communion, you give it to the people, but no matter what, if they can on sin or not, you give it to them. So that's what I think in a solarity right now. We go and pray to them and give it to them. And if they accept or not, it's after God. It's not us that one is respond to that, right? Because our conversion is first. We're not going to convert anybody. We got to show you our conversion, and then they can be converted by themselves or whatever we want to say. That's what I think. I don't know.
Very good.
Okay.
Very good.
My English no good.
We're not going to convert anyone, but they'll convert because of you. If there's nothing else, Jose Luis, can we take like a 5-minute break?
Sure.
Is 5 minutes okay with you guys, or you wanted 10? No.
Yeah, it's 1:44. I think we can come back at 1:54.
Okay. Are like us. We need that, the dignity of the life. Okay. And even though, and I love the story about stopping the migrants from crossing our border. Jesus was a migrant. Okay. Whether they have papers or not, we need to stop thinking about, oh, they're taking work away from us or things like that. But they're also children of God. We need to be the voice for them. There must be a system that's broken. And that's why there's a problem. Okay. How else can you help? Do some advocacy writing. You know, write to the editors in the paper that's local to you. Even, and this one was published in the Asian Journal. So we wrote about how Census 2020 will bring billions for healthcare services in the Inland Empire. That's solidarity work with other nonprofit organizations and also with the government, so that everyone will understand why they need to participate in the census or in any legislative action, because we need to train them. And some of them, many of our friends may feel that, no, I cannot do that because I'm not here. I don't have papers, but they can access. In California, we're trying to do something about it, okay? But we need to train. We need people to work in solidarity with other organizations. And I'm sure many of you, not all of you, have heard of CRS. That's the arm of the USCCB, of our bishops, to do the work. I went to Burkina Faso as a representative of the Diocese of San Bernardino to look at what CRS, what kind of projects do we have in Burkina Faso. Many people said, don't go there, it's dangerous. Okay, but if we should not fear. We take caution, but do not fear, says the Lord. So we went and looked at how the people lived. You know what I was so happy about it? Thousands of people came when we were there. We gathered, and many of them are Muslims. And yet they were so happy. Catholic CRS is here. They're going to help us. And they were so happy to gather together because Catholic Relief Services, the arm of USCCB, is there providing help. And you may have contributed towards that. So we made their lives better. And they're very thankful of that. So those are opportunities that you could do. Other opportunities for solidarity work is working with other nonprofit organizations as well. Here we have David Okonkos. You know, as the founding member of PAIS, which is the Philippine American International School in the Inland Empire, we would like, this came out a result of the Asian Pacific hate crime, remember that? So the California Endowment was looking for an organization that they can fund to help promote interculturality in the Inland Empire. And to do that, Father Ben, who is our consultant, we established the Philippine American Intercultural School through the National Ecumenical Forum for Filipino Concerns. Because being an Asian organization, they wanted to fund us. We did not even ask for it. They looked for us, okay, to fund us. And we need to educate our people to stop the hate, right? Just because we are different in color in our race. So one of our class, we had David Okonko, and I'm sure many of you know David. He taught about the Black community. And it was awesome. We learned about how the Black people were here from time immemorial, before slavery began. And I never knew that. They traded with the Native Americans. I did not know that. So learning somebody else's culture is very important in order for us to build the solidarity with other people. And then we have the National Alliance for Filipino Concerns. See, Father Ben, he was the first president of that organization. We started out with what, less than 10 adults. And now it's nationwide and even international, gathering many young adults who would like to be the voice for the people who are voiceless. This one especially from the Philippines, okay, because of what's going on in the Philippines. And then, of course, with Global Solidarity, CRS, now we are a CRS chapter in the Diocese of San Bernardino. And I chair that chapter. And it's something that we're trying to do out there, to put out the word so that we can work in solidarity with other people, especially those who are in need beyond this country, the United States of America. And then from there are opportunities for advocacy as concrete actions of solidarity work in the Diocese of San Bernardino. We were present at the Inland Empire Stop AAPI Hate Rally, which happened in March 2021. Many of us during that time, there was the Black Lives, many people, the Black Americans were also being oppressed, killed. And the same thing was happening with the Asian community. We have to be aware of that and what's the root causes of those problems. Okay? And where do we bring that? Be involved in what's going on, not only locally in your neighborhood, but nationally. We attended ecumenical advocacy in 2019 in Washington, D.C. Because we need to be witnesses for Christ. We need to be the witness for justice. Don't just stay in your office. And I know it was Alfonso or somebody said that, you know, they're going to be out there working outside the four walls. Yes. I'm proud of you. Go out there, be the voice. See, hear the voices of the poor, and then bring it out. Because if we see and hear and don't do anything about it to resolve that issue, the root cause of the problem, it's going to stay like that. You know, when I went to the Philippines, I brought my friend who's Irish American. She said when she was a child in Ireland, she had started collecting and selling things to help the Filipino people, to help the Columban fathers in the Philippines, because they were asking, appealing for help for the Filipinos. And she did that for many years. Then she went back with me and she said, Naida, what happened? What happened to all of that donations that we've been giving? Why has it become worse? The response, we have not solved the root cause of the problem. And then not only that, problems in the Philippines, in Mexico, in other countries, especially in third world countries, we, the people in the United States, contribute to that. We fund those military who are killing people. We take away the goods from that country. You know, those people in those countries, they plant their own food, but they don't even get to taste that because those are exported. We need to know what affects the people outside of our living spaces. And we need to advocate. Just because it's right for rich countries, and we are considered a rich country, it does not mean that it's right for third world countries. So we were there. Father Ben spoke at the National Summit for Human Rights and Democracy in 2018. And we went to USCCB to raise these issues of what's happening in the Philippines. And you could do the same. If there's anything happening in your community, you could do the same and be the voice for the voiceless of your motherland. So we met with the directors of those offices in charge of foreign affairs at USCCB to see what they can do so that they can affect the legislative actions that will be presented. See, because USCCB has a voice, remember that. Okay. So in conclusion, and we all know this already, we talked about, am I my brother's keeper? What's your response now? Are you your brother's keeper? That's very hard. And you know, have you heard, sometimes Pope Francis, because of his love for the poor, has been accused of being communist. And his response, fighting for the poor does not make me a communist. We are a communal people as Catholics. Like Mr. Dava said, you know, hey, it's a community. Now Alfonso wants to raise his child. Is he born yet? Yeah. So, you know, to be part of that community because we are communal. You know, at the world meeting with popular movements, and that's what we're called, the other nonprofit organizations, those organizations that go out there and advocate and rally on behalf of the poor, they're the popular movements. So in 2014, Pope Francis said, and he defined solidarity, he said, it is a word that is not always well accepted. And that was shared by Tom, that, hey, how do I say this correctly so that I don't alienate people? But hey, the Pope said it's not always accepted, but it's a word that is much maligned and unrepeatable. However, it is a word that indicates much more than a few sporadic acts of generosity. Does that run deep in you? It hits me. It's beyond a few sporadic acts of generosity. I thought my dollar here and there would be sufficient. But not after you've had your epiphany, and many of you have shared that. You are going to go down deep and live it. Solidarity requires thinking in communal terms. That's why the sharing is good. Because we need to look at those people who produces these goods. Are they receiving fair wages for the goods? Or is it just the top 1% of the corporate who have earned billions and billions of dollars, but does not pay their workers the right wage? And the right wage is not necessarily similar to our federal or state wages. It's much less than that. When you go to poor areas, to poor countries, it's just a few cents. That's why Father Ben said something about, let's do something about it. Watch what you spend your money on. Buy fair trade products. Costco has them now. Other grocery stores have fair trade products. And fair trade companies, organizations, they make sure that the people who produce this product, who planted these seeds, will get the right wage and can send their children to school. And that's the story of Thomas Awiapo. I believe he's from Nigeria. And that's the story behind CRS Rice Bowl. You know, when you contribute dollar here every time during that period of Lent, that money goes a long ways. That money was able to send not only Thomas Awiapo, but many, many children from other countries so that they can go to school and so that they have food on their table. So that is the communal terms of solidarity. Solidarity requires fighting structural causes of poverty. Okay, what do we mean by that? There's poverty surrounds us. We should not be surprised. There are more and more people here in the United States that are experiencing a hard life. Much more those who live outside the United States. See, the United States is a land of milk and honey. I immigrated here because it's a land of milk and honey. I won't be poor. That's why I forgot my motherland until I saw the faces of the poor. Solidarity requires facing destructive effects of the empire of money. We talked about that from the Bible, from what Father Ben has said. You may have neighbors and not know that that person is already a victim of human trafficking. Money must not serve, must serve but not rule. It's important that we have what we need in terms of finances. It's important we need money to help others. But we need to let our heart rule. Compassion, not cages. Food for the poor. What about our homeless? As you can see around you, I mean, I go on the 210 and I see villages of homeless people. That wasn't there before. What can we do for them? And I know that someone has already shared that. Solidarity in its deepest sense is a way of making history. And this is what popular movements do. So share your talents, your wisdom, your energy with other movements out there who are being the voice for the voiceless. Because things will not happen if we don't work together with the church. These are messages from Pope Francis, who knows that it's important to have the popular movements because we can all go out there. This was during Advocacy Day 2019. God is not a Republican, and here we are arguing. God is not a Democrat. God wants harmony. God wants us to talk across the aisle, where we need to place above all the life and dignity of a human person and finding the common good. It's always important when we have legislative issues, when we deal with the government, when we have to vote for something, always put what is the common good. And sometimes it's hard to find that common good. There was a time when NEFCON invited Jose Luis to speak about, well, how do we vote? Most of us, I don't want to vote. That's none of my business. But to be Catholic fully, you need to participate and exercise faithful citizenship. That's very important. Do not let others vote for you or decide for you. You need to decide for yourself and share that with others, especially those in government. And I will end there. I'm good with time. By 2:30.
Indeed, you are.
Any questions for me?
It's beautiful.
So I'm going to see each one of you. I'm going to see many of you in front of Adelanto, fighting and being the voice for those people, for our migrants and refugees, being out there in Coachella. For those who hang in there and work on solidarity, yeah, we will see each other real soon. Any comments, feedback?
Thank you, Naida. Can you please stop sharing your screen so we can see
Okay.
the hands on?
I need to do that right here.
Unless
All right.
unless you have something else to share.
No, I don't.
No?
That was
Okay.
it.
And my brothers and sisters, any reactions, comments, questions? Naida, I do have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Do you have time and are you willing to support, for example, let's say one of the students, a few of the students, many of these students in their parish communities to develop something, for example, fair trade or local or global solidarity? You can support them?
Yes, as a matter of fact, Father Ben has a series of slides on how we can put together global solidarity or ministry on solidarity in the different parishes. So we do need him back.
Yeah. I'm gonna talk to him. Yes.
Yes.
And Naida, those experiences of going out in immersion experiences, immersion trips, how can we organize those?
We can definitely do that. You can join the Filipino ministry. They have a medical mission program, immersion program. Also, NEFCON is developing an immersion program. The intent of that, it was to be in solidarity with the people so you could see. I brought, I don't know if you remember Lucas Drake, the son of, yeah. So he came with us. He came with us, and also the daughter of the JFI coordinator a few years back. So people have gone back with us to medical missions. It used to be we had Tom Rogers, who's a member of the CRS chapter. He's retired now, a retired professor of dentistry at Loma Linda University. He used to take his students to Nicaragua. Okay, and they provide dental assistance there. There are those programs that are available for you for an exposure. We can create an exposure program just for you. I mean, I work with Father Dennis, and we did a medical mission in the Coachella Valley. Okay, Sister Hortensia has also been in Coachella Valley most all the time, right, Jose Luis? And she needs help. Okay, so that it can be local, it can be national or international. But maybe Mr. Dava can create a program to invite us to, you didn't mention where you were from, Mr. Dava, but you said we're in my community, this is what happens. So maybe you could do that. And we could all join there, raise money to go there. Because it's different when you go out there and see it for yourself.
Tell us about your country, Mr. Dava.
It's Cameroon.
Cameroon.
I haven't been there.
South Africa.
Yeah.
It's not close to Burkina Faso.
Yeah, it's not close to Burkina Faso.
Okay.
The Pope prayed for Cameroon today in the Angelus. Look for the Angelus in YouTube today. Pope Francis Angelus, and at the end of the prayer, you pray for Cameroon.
And sometimes CRS has programs. Well, they ask people to represent CRS or the diocese. That's why I went to Burkina Faso. And, you know, you work there, you look at the situation there, working in solidarity with the people there. And you get to meet people who are not Catholics. And I learned to respect the faith of other people. I learned not to be judgmental. You're not Catholic. You know, what did Pope Francis said? My God's not Catholic. That's what the Pope said. I may be Catholic, but my God's not Catholic. See? So they're God. Remember, we all came from one God? We're children of God. So it's different when you look at that situation. If you are becoming deacon, hey, and if you have the means or develop a means, go to Jerusalem. Been there 3 times. Because why? This is where I see also the history, the real history that's written in the Bible. It becomes alive. That's why we develop pilgrimages. Because then you go to the root of your faith. You get to learn and see it. And the Bible just, oh my gosh, this is what I've read. You know, the tree that Zacchaeus climbed, you know, things like that, climbing Mount Sinai. So it's really quite an experience. If you are able to do that, do that. I encourage that, yeah. Because that's where the root of faith, that's where our faith came from.
Yeah.
Thank you, Naida. Dan, we have a brief question, a brief comment.
You know, opportunities for solidarity. Naida mentioned about medical mission. I think the Filipino ministry is going to move forward to have this medical mission again next year. Usually they have it in January. So I think at this point, the Philippine ministry is planning, you know, still in the planning stage. Who are the ones coming? What are the resources? So it's in the works, but definitely there will be one for next year.
Yeah, and that's the brainchild of Father Ben.
So I guess if you're interested, you can contact Naida, or you can contact me, or if can contact Jose, then we'll get back to you.
Thank you, Dan, for sharing that. Beautiful. Well, it's time to close. Let's see if we have any closing question, thought before we conclude. Naida, are you also sharing your PowerPoint with us?
Yes, I will. It's actually one PowerPoint with Father Ben. So mine just at the end. So until he's finished, I think I will let him take care of sharing. This is just one PowerPoint. I don't have a separate PowerPoint.
And we have your information in there, right? You can contact you through email or phone number.
Yes. And actually, I can put it. It's everyone, right?
Yeah, everyone.
Uh-huh.
So, brothers and sisters, be ready. Naida is sharing her info through the chat.
And anybody who's interested in our PAIS program, it's really a great program. And I also, Jose Luis, I want to invite you to be part of our instructor in PAIS, because we have David Okonkwo to talk to us about the Black community. We have someone from the LGBTQ to talk about the history of that and why they have been ostracized. And sometimes it just takes a little understanding of what went on and, and how it's seen. And then we have also a presentation, a class on the theater of the oppressed. And there was another class, contemporary indigenous dancing. So if you know anybody who can teach indigenous dancing, that would be great. We had an immersion with the Native Americans in Saboba. That's part of our program. And we work with other organizations just in solidarity with the people here. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with ICUC, the Inland Coalition United for Change. We have ICIJ, the Inland Justice for Immigrant. So there are many organizations that you can join who are really out there. They're popular movements who are fighting and being the voice for the people.
Thank you so much, Naida. Okay, if there's no any other comment or question, we are going to close with a very short prayer. I'm gonna ask Mr. Fernando if you can read for us the prayer and pray for us with the English prayer that is in your left-hand side.
Jose Luis, should we close the interpretation so that everybody can hear everything at the same time?
Please, yes, please. Thank you so much, Elsa Laura. Fernando, do you want to say aloud the prayer and we follow you?
Spanish or English?
Which is more comfortable for you?
Either one.
Okay. Can your wife read Spanish?
Yeah.
Can you please read it in English and then your wife in Spanish?
Okay.
This is a closing prayer in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. And we thank you, Lord, for this workshop. And we conclude the workshop thanking you and thanking the instruments you use today for us to communicate your will. Go ahead, Fernando and Sonia.
Almighty and ever-living God, empower your one human family to join hands in our journey of faith. Send us your spirit of hope so that we may work to alleviate human suffering and foster charity and justice in our world. Amen.
Dios Todopoderoso y Eterno, empodera tu única familia humana para que sea una en nuestro camino de fe. Envíanos tu espíritu de esperanza para que podamos trabajar para aliviar el sufrimiento humano y fomentar la caridad y la justicia en nuestro mundo. Amén.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
And may the divine mercy continue pouring his mercy upon us And Mary, Mother of Mercy, intercede for us, especially for the solution of the conflict in Ukraine and other parts of the world. May peace be brought to earth. Thank you, Fernando and Sonia, and thank you all for your active participation. I hope to send you soon the PowerPoint Father Ben and Neida created for us today. I'm also gonna work in the video so we can edit a good video for you. And our next workshop is gonna be on Saturday, not Sunday. Take note that the next month is not a Sunday.
¿El siguiente va a ser sábado?
Saturday, May 28. Saturday, May 28.
Mayo 28.
Our topic is care for our common home. Thank you all so much. God bless you and enjoy the rest of the divine.
29-28.
Thank you for the opportunity, Jose Luis and everyone. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you so much. Thank you,
Bye.
Neida. Thank you, Neida. Have some rest and I really
Thank
appreciate
you,
it.
Naida.
Good night.